Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Torah studies class for the Torah portion of Emor, Shabbos, a day of rest, reimagining the essence of Shabbos. So I don't know about you, but definitely for me, Shabbos is my favorite day of the week. It's a day that I look forward to. Even though Shabbos is a day that you cannot use electronics, and my phone is never more than a few inches away from me on any day. Nevertheless, right, Shabbos is absolutely the best. I've said this many times in the past that anytime there's a family get together, doesn't matter if we're spending a week together, 2 weeks together, Shabbos is the highlight. You spend Friday night together, Shabbos day, Shabbos afternoon together. There's nothing like it in the world. I just was at a bar mitzvah for my cousin in Tarrytown, New York, at a hotel, 150 friends and family, all in the hotel for Shabbos. There's nothing like it. Again, we're up till 3 o'clock in the morning singing and talking and sharing. No distractions of any electronics. We really were together. It was beautiful. It was spiritual. It was holy. There's nothing like Shabbos, right? Shabbos is the best. But what is Shabbos really about? What is it really about? This is what we want to talk about tonight because there are so many questions. So first, the basic fundamental principle. Why is Shabbos on the seventh day of the week, right? Why is Shabbos on what we call Saturday? So we all know the answer is because in 6 days God created the world. On the seventh day he rested. Therefore, we rest as well. Few questions. Would you describe Shabbos as a restful day? I can tell you as a rabbi, Shabbos is the least restful day. Enjoyable, yes. Restful, no. Right? Lengthy Shabbos meals, long davening, reading of the Torah, sermons, kiddushes afterwards, right? Kids jumping around all over the place, extra Torah classes. Shabbos is absolutely not a restful day. So what does it mean? Hashem rested, therefore we rest. Shabbos is not exactly the most restful day. Can you sneak in a nap? Some people can. I got kids, I can. But it just doesn't appear to be the most restful day. Another question. What does this mean that God rested? He was tired? He overworked himself? Was there like some union limitation to working more than 6 days? Why did God have to rest? Now, if we can understand why God rested, that might give us a little bit of information as to how we're supposed to rest on Shabbos, because we know God did not rest because he was, worked too hard. Another question. Why is Shabbos holy? What exactly is holy about Shabbos? We understand that it's a day of rest, but what's the connection between being a day of rest and holiness? God created the world in 6 days. He rested on the seventh, so we rest. Okay, let's rest. What does that have to do with holiness? And another question. What makes Shabbos holy to begin with? Fine, we're going to say Shabbos is a holy day. But why? What is it all about? So let's go to a biblical verse, which tells us a little bit about Shabbos. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. For on it he rested from all his work. So the Torah tells us, why is Shabbos day holy? Because Hashem rested. Now, logically speaking, does this follow? How is it that resting automatically translates into holiness? Have you ever heard of a casual rest day? Why does it have to be a holy rest day? What would be so wrong about having a day of rest that doesn't happen to have any holiness, any sanctity, any particular restrictions? Would you sign up for such a rest day? Mitchell? Arlene? A day of rest. We'll make Wednesday is a day of rest. It's not holy. It's not a holiday. It's just a day of rest. Sounds good. The Torah could have said God worked for 6 days. On the seventh day he rested. Therefore we rest too. A non-holy rest day. Sounds good. I'd sign up for it. I'd enjoy it. I think that would be quite wonderful. Yet the Torah says, it's a holy day. So what does this mean? So we've explained that on Shabbos we're meant to rest, but the rest is really not about relaxation. When we talk about Shabbos being a day of rest because Hashem rested, we're talking about a new definition of rest, the type of rest that could apply even to God. So let's go to text number 2, which is Rashi's commentary on the verse. He says, what was the world lacking? Rest. Along came Shabbos, along came rest. With this, the work of creation was completed. Now think about this for a little bit. Have you ever had a contractor in your house do something and you want to know, when is the job finished? And the person says, well, the last thing that I have to do is nothing. You'd say, are you crazy? What does that mean? The last thing that you have to do to make it all good is rest. Doesn't even make any sense. What does this mean? Yet, what does the Torah tell us? The act that completed creation was Hashem resting. How on earth are we supposed to understand that? Right? Hashem not working, that is the act that brought about the completion of creation. So we have some questions. What is the essence of Shabbos? Right? God is indefatigable and yet rested on the seventh day. How do we define and understand and interpret this rest? And number 2, how does resting on Shabbos make it holy? And how does Hashem resting on Shabbos make the world complete? Right? It seems to be a nothing activity. It's not an act. So how does that result in completing the world? In order to understand this, we're going to go into some deep Hasidic philosophy. And we begin with this question. How is it possible to create a finite world that can seem to exist in an independent state? So Judaism teaches that before God created the world, right, God was everywhere, God was everything, God is infinite. There simply is no space for anything else to exist outside of God, right? So how is it possible that God could create something new? How does it work? If God takes up all space, now God created space as well, but if you understand the question, how could it be that anything could exist in the presence of God when God is so infinite, right? Perhaps one way of thinking about it is, could a candle exist inside of the sun? It's impossible. It would burn up totally and completely. The sun is such a powerful presence, nothing else can exist within its space, so to speak. Similarly, how could any creation possibly exist within the space of God? And we know that nothing can exist outside of the space of God. So how does it work? So Hasidic philosophy teaches us that God used something which is called tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means to contract, to conceal. So God used tzimtzum, namely concealment of his energy, to the point that it is incognito in our world. What does this mean? On a bright, sunny day, are you able to look at the sun? Not only are you not able to look at the sun, it often can be very difficult to look even straight ahead, depending on the direction that you're in. So what does a person do if they want to be able to see? You put on sunglasses. What is the function of sunglasses? The function of sunglasses is to conceal the brightness of the light, and that will allow you to see. This is essentially what tzimtzum is about. God conceals and contracts his infinite light in order to make space for people to exist and to feel that they are independent. Too much light, nothing can exist. Put on sunglasses, and all of a sudden you can exist. This does not mean that God disappears. Absolutely not. Just like when you put on sunglasses, the sun does not disappear. Rather, you have something that conceals the manifestation and the expression of the sun in order that you're going to be able to see. So in order for us to be able to see on the bright sunny day, we need those sunglasses. In order for us to be able to exist, God needs to put on sunglasses, so to speak. God needs to conceal his infinite light and allow us to exist. Any questions thus far before we read the text itself from the Alter Rebbe? Because it's important that this is clear. If it's not clear, the rest of the class is not going to flow. So let's see this in the Alter Rebbe's words himself. God's power of restraint is the quality of tzimtzum, concealment, whereby he withholds his great expansiveness and prevents it from descending and being revealed to created beings. Rather than animating all of creation openly, he operates in concealment to create the impression that the created being exists independently from God. Though the created being has no independent existence, nevertheless, the restraining power of the omnipotent God conceals the spiritual life force that flows from him so as not to nullify the existence of the created being. If God did not conceal his presence, we simply could not exist. It would be like us staring into the sun without any sunglasses. It simply could not work. So through God concealing himself, he allows us to feel as if we are independent beings outside of God. Now, this tells us two almost contradictory ideas. Number one, we are dependent on God for our existence, which I think is obvious and straightforward. We are dependent on God for his existence, for our existence. However, we are not able to tangibly experience God, or else we would no longer exist. So we are dependent on God for our existence, yet God must conceal himself in order for us to exist. All right, I'll say it one more time. We are dependent on God for our existence, yet God must conceal himself in order for us to be able to exist. This is called tzimtzum. Now, in order for this tzimtzum to work, we need to have the right balance. Giving again the sunglasses analogy. If the sunglasses are not strong enough, your eyes are still going to hurt and you're not going to be able to see. If the sunglasses are too dark, you won't be able to see anything because there's nothing to see through. Right? You need the perfect balance. Similarly, right, in God's process of creating the world, there is a balance, right, of tzimtzum. There's a balance of contraction, and it happens to be that different creations within the world have different levels of concealment and contraction. So there are gradations of tzimtzum in the world. The more revealed the life force, the higher is the form of life. What this means is, the more God conceals his presence, the less life can be sensed, felt, and experienced in that element of creation. The less the concealment, the more life can be felt and experienced within that creation. So the world is divided up into four categories. Category number one, inanimate object. It must have the spark of God within it for it to exist. But it has such a concealed and contracted spark of God that a rock does not appear to have any life. It doesn't move, it doesn't grow, it doesn't change, it doesn't make any noise, because the godliness within it is concealed so much that it doesn't appear to have any visible life force. Then we move to plant life. So all plant life has a higher degree of godliness that's revealed within it. Therefore, it grows. Plant life starts as a tiny seed, and that seed can blossom and grow into a huge tree with leaves and branches, with roots, with fruit, with produce, with vegetables, all kinds of beautiful stuff. So why is it able to do that? Because there's less divine concealment, therefore there's more life. Then we move on to animals. Animals have even more of the divine spark revealed within them, which is why not only do they grow, but they move around. They're not like a plant, which is rooted in one spot. The animal is free to move, to roam. The animal hunts. The animal can be creative. The animal can plan. The animal builds a house. The animal shows expressions of love and care. It takes care of children. So an animal, why is an animal able to do that? Because it's a higher level of life force. And finally, of course, is people, right? People have a higher degree of a divine spark that's revealed in the person, which is why we also have the ability to speak. Right? We have the ability to speak. We have the ability to think about the future, plan for the future. We can introspect about our own life. We're able to do tshuva. We create art. We create music. The sophistication of a person is so high that not only can we do all these things, but we can even become aware of our creator. Right? We even have the ability to think about and to know and desire to connect to God. That's the degree of life force that exists within a person. What's one step higher? An angel, right? An angel has even more degree of godliness revealed within the angel. So the angel, of course, would be the higher life form. Now, here's the question. Is it possible, right, to do a reverse tzimtzum? What do I mean by that? The process of tzimtzum is to conceal the presence of God. Is there anything we can do to reveal the presence of God? Maybe to upgrade the particular current level of awareness of God that we have. If we could upgrade the status of concealment to allow a greater revelation of God and to tap into that, is that a possibility, right? Does the tzimtzum veil ever lift and reveal more of God? Can the rock become a plant? Can a plant become an animal? Can an animal become a human? But what's our question? Can a human ever become an angel? Can a human rise up the ladder of tzimtzum? Right? And the answer, of course, is yes. When? On Shabbos. On Shabbos, the veil lifts somewhat, and on Shabbos, there's a greater revelation of godliness. Let's go to text number 5 here. This is from Rabbi Shalom Dober Schneerson, the 5th Rebbe of Chabad. We'll read a little biography here. Hasidic Rebbe Rabbi Shalom Dober became the 5th leader of the Chabad movement upon the passing of his father, Rabbi Shmuel Schneerson. He established the Lubavitch network of yeshivas called Tomchei Tmimim. He authored many volumes of Hasidic discourses and is renowned for his lucid and thorough explanations of Kabbalistic concepts. He was born in 1860 and he died in 1920. The concept of divine rest is to refrain from tzimtzum. As it is written, Elokim completed on the 7th day. Elokim is the name of God that represents God's capacity for restraint and concealment. And on Shabbos, the tzimtzum implied by the name Elokim expired, and God rested from the act of tzimtzum. Something similar occurs every week on Shabbos. On this day, God rests from the act of concealment, and the divine light is revealed without the veil of tzimtzum, making us aware that we are standing before the King. So what is the rest that Hashem is doing on Shabbos? We just explained the definition of God creating a world is the process of God concealing and hiding himself. That is the definition of God creating. The only way God can create a world is to conceal and to hide himself. This means on Shabbos, he stopped creating, he stopped working. That means Hashem stopped the process of concealing himself. So when we say that Hashem rests on Shabbos, he rests from hiding and concealing himself. In other words, on Shabbos, we have a greater revelation of God, which is why Shabbos is actually a holy day. All right, in the PowerPoint, some of the answers. God rests the concealment that made creation possible, right? So we asked the question, what does this mean that God rested? It means he rested from concealing himself. This rest renders Shabbos a holy day, and all creation's holier, because God is no longer hiding himself. On Shabbos, God is revealed. During the week, we have a much harder time being aware of the presence of God in our life. Because during the week, God is concealing himself. He's hiding himself. We're working, we're busy, we're running, we're doing. It's hard to experience it and to appreciate it. During the week, we are often unaware of our Creator because our Creator is concealing himself. However, on Shabbos, God rests from concealing himself. There is a greater divine revelation. We become aware of our Creator in a much more concrete way on Shabbos. Therefore, Shabbos is a holy day. Now I ask you, Mitchell, do you feel holier on Shabbos? Do you feel more spiritual on Shabbos? Do you feel more sensitive on Shabbos? Just say yes. It's going to go good for the class. But no, Mitchell,
Yes,
what do you
yes.
think? What do you say? Is Shabbos different than the rest of the week?
It is now.
Absolutely. Right. Sandy, do you feel a little bit different on Shabbos? You feel a little when you walk into the shul on Shabbos, when you light Shabbos candles, there's a little bit of holiness?
She's muted.
Right. I see you're shaking your head and that you're agreeing. That'll work for me. On Shabbos, we are more spiritual. Look what the Talmud says in this next text. An additional measure of soul is given to us on Friday afternoon and is taken from us on Saturday night. This is derived from the, first of all, why do we have an extra level of soul on Shabbos? Because if God is no longer concealing himself, we need special glasses that are going to allow us to experience the holiness, right? If Hashem is taking off our sunglasses on Shabbos, he's no longer concealing himself, we're going to go blind. So what does Hashem do? He gives us an extra measure of soul on Shabbos, so we are now able to experience the holiness of Shabbos. This is derived from the verse on the seventh day, Shavas vayinafash, he rested and was refreshed. These Hebrew words form an abbreviation for Kivan Sheshavas ve'avda nefesh. Once Shabbos ends, whoa, our additional soul is lost. Now, don't just think this is some type of story, some type of a mythical tale that the Talmud likes to say. This has a very, very practical application during the Havdalah ceremony. Our sages instituted the ritual of smelling spices at the end of Shabbos to revive the soul, which is melancholy at this time over the departure of the additional soul. We settle the soul and cheer it with the pleasing fragrance. The code of Jewish law says, why, when we make Havdalah at the conclusion of Shabbos, do we smell spices? We smell spices because the extra soul that we got on Shabbos departs. We're down. Therefore, we smell the spices, which smell is the most spiritual of all the senses that we have, and it can invigorate us and lift us up once again. Now, maybe you don't believe me. Now, I certainly hope you do, but maybe you're a little bit skeptical, and you're thinking to yourself, Shabbos is different than the rest of the week. Shabbos, we get an extra soul. Shabbos is holy. I don't know what you're talking about. It feels like any other day, just there's some more rules and regulations. I can tell you that's not true, and I can prove it. How can I prove it? Number one, smokers. Now, thankfully, smoking is not very popular anymore, but if you know anyone who is a real smoker, 2 packs a day, they can't go like more than 10 minutes without itching and needing a cigarette. They're running outside, they're running there. In their house, it smells like smoke. Their car, it smells like smoke. They can't function without a cigarette. They go to an event, anything. They're having such struggles and challenges because they can't have that cigarette. There are, for better or worse, a large amount of smokers in the Orthodox community. For whatever reason, it would be interesting, sociologically speaking, one of the few vices that are kosher, I don't know. In Israel especially, there's people who smoke. I've been around them on Shabbos. It's like cigarettes don't exist. It's unbelievable. If you were with them on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, the cigarette is glued to their face. They can't function without it. They're going crazy for it. On Shabbos, cigarettes don't exist. They're not itching, they're not thinking, they're not talking, they're not running. Why? It's Shabbos. It's a holy day. You have another soul. It's different. It's just different. Another example, cell phones. I mentioned before, my cell phone is here. Your cell phone is always connected to you. So many people are addicted, for better or worse, to their cell phone. I cannot sit on a Tuesday on my couch and read a book for 10 minutes straight without looking at my phone 3 times. This is the reality. Constantly looking at your phone, right? I study with someone on the phone every week, right? And I'm still looking at other things on my phone while I'm talking. And I'm still looking at it. It's crazy. But this is how we are, constantly. Phone, where's my phone? I need my phone. That is how so many people function. Mitchell, you don't have a smartphone yet, so maybe you don't relate to it. But it's something that I and so many people can relate to in a major way. When Shabbos happens, phones don't exist. I don't sit on the couch with a book and thinking, oh, where's my phone? Oh, it's Shabbos, I don't have a phone. It doesn't exist. It's like it disappears. Because on Shabbos, we're a different person. On Shabbos, we're more relaxed. Right? We feel more calm on Shabbos. Not only that, Mitchell, not only that, the poor feel rich on Shabbos. You sit down on a Shabbos table, wine, challah, fish, chicken, meat. It's beautiful. Everyone's dressed in the Shabbos clothes. You feel like a king. And I don't just mean this in a nice, poetic way. I mean it in the most real way. The Medrash says a person's face is incomparably radiant on Shabbos than the rest of the week. And I want to prove this in a beautiful story in a book from my favorite rabbi, Rabbi Aaron Rakefet in Israel, about his great teacher, Rabbi Soloveitchik. He writes, in Warsaw, this is about Rabbi Soloveitchik. In Warsaw, we lived 3 houses away from the Mudjitzer Stiebel. Mudjitz is a type of Hasidic Jews, Mudjitzer Hasidim. Generally, I would go to the Mudjitzer Stiebel for the Suda Shlishit, the 3rd meal of Shabbos. They would sing all the Zmiras for the Suda Shlishit. Poor Jews would be seated around the table in the Stiebel. I knew these Jews well, and I constantly spoke with them. They were sincerely pious Jews who willingly sacrificed for their spiritual commitments. I once spoke with one of them who was frail and short. He constantly carried heavy metal pieces, and I wondered where he got the physical strength to support this weight. His load was always tied around him with a thick cord, and he totally resembled a coolie. On the Shabbos, I saw this very Jew, and I did not recognize him. He came over to me in his tattered kapota. Kapota is the long black coat Hasidim wear on Shabbos. It was covered with endless patches, and even the patches had patches. Yet his face shone with the joy of Shabbos. I recognized in a tangible fashion that a person's Shabbos countenance is totally different than his weekday appearance. Right? The Rav, Rabbi Soloveitchik, describes that he would see these poor Hasidic Jews who labored physically schlepping things, porters during the week. On Shabbos, they were kings. On Shabbos, their face radiated with the holiness of Shabbos. On Shabbos, were different people. One of the greatest Hasidic Rebbes, his name was Rabbi Yisrael of Ruzhin. The Ruzhiner Rebbe was born in 1796. He died in 1850. The story is told that when he was a kid in Cheder, they were learning the laws of Shabbos, and the teacher said, what happens if you get lost, you lose track of time, and you don't know what day it is? When do you observe Shabbos? How do you observe Shabbos? So the Ruzhiner said, I don't understand what you're talking about. How could a person not know it's Shabbos? Look up at the sky. It's a different sky. Shabbos, holiness. It's palpable. It's real. And this is not just a philosophical idea that you can find in books. There is a practical, legal, halachic application to this idea. When a couple gets married, under the chuppah, we give them 7 blessings. In Hebrew, Sheva brachos. So the tradition is that following the wedding, for a week, we have a special meal every day together with the bride and the groom, and we give them these 7 blessings once again. They're called Sheva brachos. Beautiful meals that extend the ceremony, the joy, the happiness of the wedding for an entire week. However, there is a rule. In order to say these 7 blessings, there must be a new person who was not at the wedding or one of the previous Sheva brachos. It's called in Hebrew a panim chadashos. Why? Because there has to be a new joy to be able to say the 7 blessings. If everyone already who was there already, there's nothing new. A new person has to come. No new person, you're not allowed to say Sheva brachos. I've been to many Sheva brachos where you have to go out in the street and knock on doors and find someone who's a new person to come in order to be able to make that blessing. However, the Talmud says there's an exception. On Shabbos, you do not need a new face. Why don't you need a new face on Shabbos? Because Shabbos is the new face. Now, all the commentators say, what do you mean Shabbos is the new face? Shabbos is not a face. Shabbos is not a person. Shabbos can't make any blessings. What does this mean? The Rebbe explains so beautifully. On Shabbos, there is no need for a new face. For a Jew's face is incomparably more radiant on Shabbos than during the week. Our radiance renews on Shabbos and confers upon us the status of a new face. On Shabbos, we are different people. On Shabbos, we are brand new. Therefore, on Shabbos, you don't need a new person because each and every one of us is a new person on Shabbos due to the holiness of the day. So this explains much of the questions that we asked before, but it explains something incredibly important, right? On Shabbos, we're not allowed to work, right? Why are we not allowed to work on Shabbos? What is the idea of working? To work means you are creating something, right? You are like an independent being who needs to create things in this world. Now, if you are standing before the king, right? Imagine you're actually standing before a king. Are you an independent person who can be creating at that moment? Absolutely not. You are with humility and selflessness, subservient to the king. You are not going to exert your own independence and start working on some type of project. It's simply not going to happen. Because we feel God's presence more on Shabbos, we are forbidden to work on the mundane. But it's not just that we're forbidden, we can't. It's not possible. On Shabbos, a person can't. It's not possible to be able to do it. During the week, when God's presence is concealed, we feel independent, we can work, we could create, and we can do. On Shabbos, we feel the presence of God. We're one with him. We're one. We're not capable of working and creating and doing and making something that's outside or separate and independent, right? On Shabbos, our focus is completely on the spiritual. So on Shabbos, right, we rest. Oh, is there more here? Okay. So on Shabbos, we rest. Why are we resting? Because we can't work. Because God resting means his presence is revealed. In the presence of God, right, we're completely one with him. And that's it. But we have to remember that it's Shabbos rest and not relaxation. On Shabbos, we have to work harder to make sure that we plug in and tap into that extra soul, this gift from God that we received. And that way we could daven more, and we could learn more, and we could come to the Kiddush, and we could spend time with family. It takes work, right? In order to appreciate the holiness, it takes work, not physical work, not creative work. It takes profound spiritual work. As the Rebbe says, resting on Shabbos doesn't mean the absence of work. Not only do we work to serve God on Shabbos, but our work is also of a higher order. We must therefore conclude that resting on Shabbos means to work in a manner that's restful and delightful. That is to say, it's not considered laborious at all because it's a pleasure to engage in such work. A simple example: if we were given permission to gather as many gems and diamonds as we could, we would spare no effort in carrying the heaviest load that we could possibly lift. Though this would entail strain, toil, and perspiration, it would not be considered strenuous or burdensome. But on the contrary, the heavier the load, the more delighted we would be. So what are we trying to say? Let's try to wrap this up with a few points. When we say that Hashem rested on Shabbos, what do we mean? It means that Hashem rested from concealing himself, which means Hashem reveals himself on Shabbos, which is why Shabbos is a holy day. Because Shabbos is a holy day, when God's presence is revealed, we can't work, it's impossible. Therefore, the rest on Shabbos is not a rest of relaxation, right? It is a rest in the sense that our pursuits are only spiritual and they're permeated with intense and incredible joy. There's a great story that Sammy Rohr would say, right? Sammy Rohr passed away a few years ago. He was an incredible philanthropist, tremendous supporter of Jewish institutions, of Jewish causes. The Jewish Learning Institute, which this is a part of, is called the Rohr Jewish Learning Institute. So he tells the story that when he was running and hiding during the Holocaust, he made his way to Basel, Switzerland. And the rabbi of the community in Basel, Switzerland, his name is Rabbi Dov Yehuda Shachat. If you're interested, Rabbi Dov Yehuda Shachat is the great grandfather, either the great grandfather of Rabbi Dubi Lisker from Mequon. So we have some family that's in here. Tremendous rabbi. Later he moved to Toronto, Rabbi Shachat. And Rabbi Shachat would say to him, Sammy, on Shabbos morning, we have a class, Torah class, 7 a.m. Why don't you come to Shul Shabbos morning, 7 a.m., come to the Torah class? And Sammy Rohr said to the rabbi, there's one day a week that I can sleep. One day I can sleep. And you want me to come to a Torah class? And Rabbi Shachat responded to him, there's one day of the week that you're able to come to a Torah class and you want to sleep? Yes, on Shah, you got to work for it a little bit. Yes, you got to get up, you got to work for it. But when you work for it, that's when you're going to experience it. So I want to conclude with one final point, which this is absolutely critical. A person may say, oh, I don't feel any of this spirituality on Shabbos. I went to Shul 3 years ago in May 17th, and I walked in and it was boring. I didn't know what was going on. I stayed there because it was a bar mitzvah. I had to be there. Then I left and there's nothing going on. How do you respond to that? The answer is very simple. If during the week you strive to experience spirituality and godliness when it's hard, when it's challenging, when God's presence is concealed, when you have a busy schedule, when you have to go to work, if you strive to feel spirituality and godliness during the week under those circumstances, then on Shabbos, you'll feel like you hit the lottery. On Shabbos, you will feel the spiritual jackpot. On Shabbos, you will feel like a different person. Because on Shabbos, it's revealed. But if during the week, a person doesn't make any efforts to experience any spirituality and godliness, if during the week, God is not part of your life on any level, you're not going to feel anything on Shabbos either. Shabbos is not going to be that much different. But for the person who searches during the week, on Shabbos, it's going to be found unbelievably. And then even on Shabbos, that's when you got to be up at 7 a.m. for the Torah class. And when we're busy on Shabbos, that's when we're going to feel the greatest holiness. Right? Any questions, comments? Right? We have only one more week of this class on Tuesday before it switches to Monday night, because the shul's softball team begins on Tuesday, May 11th. So we're going to have to, starting that week, we're going to have the classes begin on Monday evening. Tomorrow evening, Wednesday night, we begin our JLI class. And Thursday, we have our Lag BaOmer barbecue, hot dogs, s'mores, a bounce house, right? You like a bounce house, Mitchell, right? There'll be special hours. There's going to be time for the kids, time for the adults. It's going to be a lot of fun. So happy Lag BaOmer to everyone. So thank you so much for joining us, and God willing, we'll see you next week.